Eh bien, bonsoir à tous.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this first debate of Bibliotopia for this year. Happy to see you, happy to see our authors, especially because our subject is a very interesting one this year, not an easy one. What is love? We've got an hour to answer the question, so it's a challenge to the three of you. But it's a wonderful question, a very beautiful question in these times of war, anxiety, and disasters. I'd like to congratulate whoever thought up the idea of talking about love for an entire weekend. So what is love? Céline said it's in the infinite placed within the reach of poodles. Proust said love is time and space measured by the heart. I think that this latter definition is interesting because it's quite closely related to your three books, which make us very sensitive to love. The three of you are young, but you tell us about your experience of love with its illusions, its ecstasy, its wounds, and solitude. In your three books, we discover absolute love, romantic love, pragmatic love, accidental love, fleeting love or committed love, a miracle or a curse. It is love that we find in the mountains and in the cities of Europe. It takes on many forms, and we're going to ask you to speak about some of these during this meeting. Aurélie Lacroix, thank you for being here. Your first novel, L'unique objet de mon regard, published by Cambourakis, was published in September 2023. It's about a 15-year love affair that puts the narrator in a psychiatric hospital. So it's a story of a crazy love, a destructive love between two women, two girls and then women. You've worked in publishing, you still work in culture, you live in Bordeaux. This is a book about women because it's about love between women and also because there are a lot of very well-drawn female characters, the aunt who dies at 42, the colleague Virginia. And it's also a book about grief and mourning, the mysterious relationship between grief and love. Pierric Bailly, thank you for coming as well. You have just published La Foudre through the publisher P.O.L. in September 23. This is your fifth novel. You're from this area. We're going to be interested in talking about the area with you. You're from the Jura, between Switzerland and France, and in fact some areas which are very close to where we are tonight. Your main character, your narrator, is a shepherd without transhumance, so he's a stationary shepherd, and he enters into a love story on several levels, if you will, because Julien, the main character, loves a woman who loves someone else, who's married to someone else. In this book, we have the silence of the mountains and a tragic dimension, because the husband of the woman Julien loves has killed someone. The husband is a veterinarian. He's very involved in animal welfare movements, and he has killed a hunter. So in these Jura mountains, it's a very strange atmosphere in the Jura with its cold winters and the solitude of the shepherd, but his solitude is a source of joy for him as well. You'll tell us about this. Stefania Rousselle, you published Amour, Love, in 2022. You are a journalist. You worked for the New York Times. You've done a lot of reporting on very difficult subjects, At the beginning of your book, you talk about human exploitation, sexual slavery. You were nominated for this reporting for the Pulitzer Prize. You've just brought out a series of articles in Le Monde, which is close to what you've written in Amour. You've gone out to meet people, ordinary people, people like you and me, and these people have told you what love is to them. What is love? That is the question that you ask to each of the people you interview. And through this question, there are issues of solitude, death, grief, but also rebirth. So you're the one I'd like to ask the first question to. There are a lot of characters in your book from all ages, all walks of life, all regions in France. Does this mean that there's no particular time in life to love best, according to what you've found out from these people? The question is there, well, the people you interviewed, is love for them an accident, something that just happens? Well, each story is so different in the way that these people have fallen in love. So I don't think, no, there's a specific time in life which is the best to fall in love. If that were true, I would lose all hope. But what's fantastic is that you can fall in love at any age, but love can also make you suffer at any age. Because we're talking about love, but you're presupposing that love is wonderful. Is that the basic assumption? Whereas many of the people I met say that love can cause a lot of suffering. For others, it will be a sublime experience. For others, it'll be one night. For others, a few months. But of course, it depends on what you put behind the word love. But the butterflies in the stomach, yes, that happens, but only at the beginning. And then it depends. But we were talking about this earlier while we were waiting to come in. A lot of people in my book talk about the beginning of their love story, and they hang on to that. I love this person at the beginning, but they didn't know the person. This is why we say we fall in love. Aurélie Lacroix, your book is called L'unique objet de mon regard, and it's about a passionate relationship. Is that passion for you? Having somebody who occupies your entire field of vision? You can't see anyone else? In this case, it's your narrator. I don't know if I'd really call it passion. I think it's very interesting to find myself in a debate about love, because there's a phrase that I heard at a theater, in a theater, it was on the screen, Hervé Guibert, love and erotic obsession, or one of my inventions. So it's very difficult to answer that question, what is love? Love is a passion that takes you into unreasonable territory, a destructive love. I think the particularity of passionate love may be that you have to have experienced it to be able to talk about it and describe it, because passionate love can put you in incredible states where your survival is connected to another person, that person's presence. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. A Simple Passion by Annie Ernaux talks about the same thing, and I thought this was crazy until it happened to me. So passionate love is really something that hits you on the side of the head. It's uncontrollable, even more uncontrollable than love usually is, because some people like to try to dissociate passion from love. But yes, it's quite dizzying. Pierric, your book is also an account of passion. We can call it a simple passion. At least it's simple looking at it from the outside. Maybe not simple for the narrator as he experiences it. Did you start out by thinking that you wanted to talk about a passion? No, the love story in the book was not part of the book at the beginning. The husband of the object of the narrator's affection was there, and my idea was to write a story about friendship. And as I started thinking about the friend, what his life was like, did he have a family? Did he have a woman or a man in his life? Did he have children? I could glimpse the possibility of a love story, and I hesitated to launch into that dimension because there was a risk of becoming cliché. I thought it was a bit too simple. And at the same time, maybe it was this same idea that decided me. I thought instead of rejecting this facility, I'll just go into it wholeheartedly, not to see if I could come up with something different. Confront this cliché head on. As you said, there's been a murder. The friend is in prison. He has a wife, and the narrator falls in love with the wife, a woman whose husband is in prison. On paper, it sounds a bit like a synopsis of a soap opera, a bit simplistic. But I like to think about things in contradictory terms and weigh up both sides. And I decided that instead of running away from this difficulty, I would fling myself into it, not because I thought it would be easy, but to try to get to the bottom of it. So there were two ideas at the same time. One was not to write a simplistic love story, but to write it in the first degree with no irony. I thought I have to take this to its logical extension and see if I can explore these feelings that could become melodramatic. But it's a choice, contrary to your book, where people are talking about lived experience. I had to make a choice, and I like the idea of not rejecting something, rejecting this idea. Sometimes authors do this, and I thought, well, it could work or it could not work. It's a popular, formulaic kind of novel, and I can live with that. I'm not going to try to deconstruct it or destructure it, but to just go into it with what my simplest words. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this correctly, but share what things that we all have in common. The ability to love, the ability to feel emotions, have feelings. I think this is something everyone can relate to. Aurélie Lacroix to describe this love, because I think the strength of your books is that they're very concrete. They're about love in daily life. Aurélie Lacroix, your narrator, often says that she fades away. She doesn't feel like she exists when her lover leaves her. And several times you say that love is like an addiction for her. She only feels alive when she's with her loved one. Did this become clear as you were writing? Yes, because the plan was to cover a long-term love affair, a 15-year relationship. Not a fleeting love affair. So what's interesting about this relationship is its duration and the fact that the two women meet so early in their lives. It's strange because the narrator does say that she fades away. There's a lot in my book about the gaze, about who exists, who's visible, who disappears, and the image of the loved one, who often fades away in a different way. She fades away voluntarily by taking herself out of the picture. So, yes, I would say that love for the narrator is, it's an addiction. It's a real addiction. Something you try to get away from and then you fall back into, something that's dangerous. But something you still can't do without. Yes, love can be a drug. Absolutely. And it can leave traces. It can leave scars. What happens when you don't have your fix anymore? You're in withdrawal. And how do you handle that? Well, when you're addicted, there's always a way to make up for what you're missing. And it's also it's been scientifically proved that love can have the effect of a drug. The effect of being in love. We don't all love with the same intensity, but it does generate a reaction in the brain. It's been proved scientifically. And the passion I describe is a form of dependency. Stefania, in your book, there are elements of destructiveness and addiction among the people you interviewed in your book.
I spoke to about 150 people. I slept at their place. I spent a lot of time with them. And the people I met who told me about their love relationships, these are accounts from people I truly met. And then there was a selection. And very often there was a lot of loneliness, a lot of sadness, because there was this addiction. And because the loved one is no longer there, people feel lonely. I'm thinking about Delphine. Delphine comes to my mind immediately. Delphine told me that she only fell in love when she realized that the loved one was going to leave her. Nicolas Bernouilly, he fell in love with his wife. That's the kind of love relationship that everyone has in mind. He saw his future wife in nature and fell in love with her. That's why he fell in love with her. Liliane Bertin, Michel Bertin, she would say, she looked at him. I was having dinner with them. Say, you're Michel, and I'm Liliane. And Liliane, in front of him, said, he's smothering me. He loves me so much, he's smothering me. And he said, well, her love is a little crazy, but if she weren't there, I would probably commit suicide. So without this drug, Even if it's almost torture, he stays because he thinks that's better than being alone. This is something we mentioned a while ago. We talked about Joël, that I met in Martinique, in Saint-Martin de Guadeloupe. She had been abused by her lover and said, I'm staying with him because I know he loves me. Whereas he beat her up entirely. And these are people that I did not choose. I just met them coincidentally. Céline, same thing. She was in love with an abuser who would beat her up. And I see the name of Marc. Marc is an interesting case because same thing. He said, I cannot live on my own. It's a drug. I have to be with someone. I have to have a girlfriend. I always buy 2 tickets for a show because I'll go with someone. And when I met him, he said, it's the first time that I've decided to be single, to be alone. And most people who came out of their suffering realized that they first have to love themselves so that they could get out of this addiction, realize that they could live on their own and leave this addiction to love behind because it makes them suffer. Originally, you did not necessarily have this somber notion of love. You were tired of covering wars and very negative things and decided to look at love in people. Do you want to read an excerpt from us? And the interpreters will let you hear the original.
Et puis un jour d'été, je me suis retrouvée devant Marcel, mon berger des Pyrénées, et après encore un petit pastis, il m'a dit « L'être humain est pas terrible. Il est mauvais. J'aime pas les gens, en fait. Ils sont tordus. Moi, je les évite. Tous. J'aurais préféré être un chien. » Et pourtant, il était plus seul là-haut dans sa montagne. Il s'était marié avec Katia. Si je l'aime, je sais pas. C'est un mot bizarre. Je sais pas trop. Je me sens aimée. Elle s'occupe de moi. Un peu trop, même. Mais j'y tiens. Et je me sens bien avec elle. Marcel avait raison. L'être humain n'est pas forcément bon. Il n'est pas forcément mauvais. Mais il aime. Alfred de Musset nous l'avait dit. Tous les hommes sont menteurs, inconstants, faux, bavards, hypocrites, orgueilleux ou lâches, méprisables et sensuels. Toutes les femmes sont perfides, artificieuses, vaniteuses, curieuses et dépravées. Le monde n'est qu'un égout sans fond où les phoques les plus informes rampent et se tordent sur des montagnes de fange. Mais il y a une chose sainte et sublime. C'est l'union de ces 2 êtres si imparfaits et si affreux. On est souvent trompé en amour, souvent blessé et souvent malheureux. Mais on aime. Et quand on est sur le bord de sa tombe, on se retourne pour regarder en arrière et on se dit « J'ai souffert souvent, je me suis trompée quelquefois, mais j'ai aimé. C'est moi qui ai vécu, et non pas un être factice créé par mon orgueil et mon ennui. » Donc oui, malgré tout, ce voyage m'a sauvée parce que oui, l'amour existe, la douceur est là, la tendresse surtout. Ils m'ont réparé le cœur. J'espère qu'ils répareront le vôtre. Est-ce que l'amour peut sauver le monde ? Je ne sais pas. Il y a des jours où j'en suis persuadée et d'autres absolument pas. Alors dans ces moments-là, je pense à Laurence, une ancienne prof d'économie chez qui j'ai dormi. Je me souviens, en partant de chez elle, j'ai baissé la vitre, je vais vous refaire le mouvement, pour lui dire au revoir une dernière fois. Et là, elle me regarde, elle me dit « Vive la résistance !» Je dis « Mais c'était vrai ?» Philippe, Julie, Gérard, Rolande, Noé, Jean-Patrice, Élise, Chantal, nous formions tous ensemble la résistance de l'amour, la résistance contre l'horreur. Et leurs témoignages en sont le journal de bord. Alors oui, vive la résistance.
Donc vous y croyez un peu quand même.
Et oui, j'y crois.
You believe in it. Yes, absolutely. I believe in it.
Je crois en la rencontre.
I believe in
la
the
rencontre.
encounter.
Justement, parlons-en de la rencontre.
Okay, well, let's talk about the encounter. Pierric Bailly. It's very interesting because your character, Julien, was not made for love. He lives alone. He's had a couple of relationships. He's not entirely alone. But this encounter is a divine surprise, isn't it? Yes, in a sense it is, and it's an accident. A while ago you spoke about love as an accident, which is a notion that I really liked. But I do think that he's made for love. And he might be made for love because he likes being alone. Julien is the narrator in the novel, and he tells us about his childhood and his teenage years. He says that he was a little boy who was quite the romantic, and what enables him to love as early as his childhood is the complicated relationship that he had with the group. When you're a child, especially for boys, the group prevents you from being in touch with loving feelings. You've got a group of friends, you play team sports, soccer, football. It keeps girls at bay, in a sense, and it fills up your life. Whereas I get the feeling that if you want to be able to love, you have to have an inner life. You have to be able to stay bored, to endure boredom. You have to be able to live alone, to spend time alone, which is why this character is a shepherd. He spends 5 months a year in a mountain pasture, minding his sheep. It might seem that he's a little wild, that he's untamed. You might think that he's rejecting humankind, like Marcel in your book, who's a shepherd in the Pyrenees. But he justifies his choice of job by explaining that his inner life is actually quite rich. He's got an inner life, an inner voice. And he thinks a lot, he remembers, he thinks about his love relationships quite a lot. But what's true in what you said is that at the time of the novel, he has a girlfriend. They're at a stage in their relationship where their relationship is not very powerful. It's declining. And this is exactly what enables this accident, this passion to unfold. But I do think that loneliness is a precondition to love. Turning to you, Pierric Bailly, could you maybe read an excerpt about this character's loneliness, his relationship to nature, to the landscape of the Jura mountains, as well as the mysterious aspect of the mountains, which comes and feeds the mystery of relationship? Well, I was thinking about one of the portraits in Stefania's book that resonates in me. It's a young man who confesses that he's never had a relationship in his life. He's 25, 30. He's from Germany. He never says it's not because it doesn't interest me. I'm quite obsessed, but I've never had a loving relationship in my life. And that's a bit of the situation of this shepherd who can't go out, who can't meet other women, is haunted by all these ideas. And the interpreters will let you listen to the original text. We're not far from here. We're at the sommet du Reculé.
Assis au sommet du Reculé, face au Mont Blanc, j'évoque mes lointains ancêtres italiens qui ont traversé les Alpes à pied avec leurs troupeaux pour venir s'établir en Suisse, tout au fond, là-bas, à l'autre bout du lac. Et en redescendant au milieu des hêtres majestueux, je reviens sur ma dernière rencontre avec le lynx, dans cette même forêt, il y a 2 ans, pendant une sortie en raquette. Souvent, quand je me promène seul, j'aperçois des silhouettes au loin que je n'arrive pas à identifier. Renards, chiens, chats forestiers. Mais comme je ne sais pas vraiment, il peut tout aussi bien s'agir d'un lynx. Dans le doute, je finis par me dire que ce n'en était pas un, que c'était autre chose. Il y a 2 ans, je suis absolument certain que c'était un lynx. Il s'est enfui devant moi. Il ne m'a pas montré sa face, mais j'ai eu le temps d'observer son pelage tacheté et sa queue courte et trapue à l'extrémité noire. Une entrevue que je suis tenté d'interpréter comme un signe précurseur de ce qui m'arrive aujourd'hui. L'apparition du lynx pour annoncer le retour d'Alexandre dans ma vie. Ah, on se prête facilement à ce genre d'extrapolation, petits humains que nous sommes. Voilà, c'est la chute. Je me souviens d'avoir hésité à la laisser.
I remember I hesitated leaving this in the novel.
Parce qu'elle vise un peu à désamorcer le côté solennel.
It counteracts the solemnity. There's the appearance of the lynx, who's quite symbolic.
We
all have these notions when we come up with an animal such as a lynx. You say it has to be a sign, whereas that's kind of silly when you think of it. So I hesitated leaving it in. There's a bit of irony, a bit of distance, whereas I want you to buy in the story. I want you to believe in the character. And if I undermine all the solemnity, that's not going to work. But I had a hard time being entirely serious about it, and in the end I left it. But he's wrong about one thing. It's not the return of Alexandre that's surprising in his life. Well, it's true. It's what Alexandre's return causes in his life, and he couldn't know that. He had no way of knowing. Alexandre is the one who enables the encounter. He's a transition figure. You think there's going to be something at stake in the relationship between the narrator and Alexandre, whereas it's with Alexandre's wife. Obviously, Alexandre's presence is implied, and it adds a little bit of danger to it all.
Alors,
Aurélie Lacroix, turning to you now. In your book, there's a lot of movement. We spoke about depression, pain, but there's also moments of joy, moments of love. And so there's a movement between ecstasy and falling, isn't there? Yes, absolutely. For me, what's at stake in the text is the rhythm, the pace, the narrative structure. I wondered how I could sum up 15 years of a love relationship. As you said, it's a chaotic relationship. They break up, they reunite. It's cyclical, it's constant. I thought it would be a little repetitive, so I had to find the moments that I wanted to tell about. It's a retrospective of their love relationship, and I didn't want to describe it in a linear fashion. So there is this back and forth. And in my writing, I use different tenses to illustrate that. And this constant back and forth creates a certain dizziness, apnea. I think that's what it causes in the readership. The structure is very important to me, because the writing corresponds to the substance. It reflects the substance. And in the end, what is love? I don't know. We don't know. Coming back to Guibert's sentence, what is it? Of course, it's what you think about when a relationship comes to an end. What did I experience? Why is it that I'm so sad? Did I invent it all? You've got no way of knowing. I thought, well, if I'm not able to answer the question, what is love, I can explain what it is like. And I do so thanks to this structure, which is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. It's like a patchwork. I tend to think it's better to read it in the order that I wrote it in, but if other people were to read it in another order, in another sequence, they would still have read the same book.
Il n'y a pas de chronologie linéaire et en même temps
it's not
le fait
linear,
que, voilà,
it's
ça
not
revienne, que ça soit comme une boucle,
linear book.
Ça crée aussi,
It's
je
a
pense,
loop.
à un moment donné, même si c'est assez fluide, une espèce de tourbillon.
It's fluid, it's a bit of a whirlwind that you're taken up in.
La définition même de la passion.
And to me,
votre
that's the epitome of passion. And to come back to your previous question, there's something that I could very much relate to in Pierric's novel. It sums up very well love as a feeling. There's this scene where the main character, they don't separate, but it's the end of the day, and so they both go their own ways. I hope I'm not inventing it, but the main character says he knows he's going to see her again. He doesn't know exactly where their relationship is heading, but he says, I constantly wanted to cry. There was nothing else he could do, whereas he was with other people around, but everything seemed dull and bland, and he's got no idea why he's loving this particular person. And so there was this thing, he wanted to cry constantly, I'm not doing well, she's not there with me. I know I'm going to see her, but I'm not doing well because she's no longer with me. Pierric spoke about loneliness as a precondition to love. In the case of your narrator, loneliness is something that triggers anxiety because loneliness means being without her lover. Yes, well, it's loneliness, but I don't know whether it's loneliness because she's alone or because she's without her lover. Very often you're told you're not missing the person, you're missing the love. And that's why you're unhappy. And in the narrator, you feel that it's not the relationship, it's her lover, it's E. So for the narrator, it's more than a passion. It's her ideal in life. And when they call it quits, it challenges everything in her life. So all of a sudden, she feels the ultimate loneliness. It cannot be filled because it cannot be filled by love. It can only be filled by E.
Stefania? So you're investigating about love, but people you meet don't always talk about love. Some of the couples you interview have never said that they love each other, but that doesn't make them any less valuable. Is love for you something that doesn't necessarily have to be put into words? Is what you describe love in daily life? Well, that is love, isn't it? Well, there's one answer. Yes, love is daily life. Love is often in the smallest gestures. Nicolas said every evening my daughter goes to sleep with her mother and I pick her up and I take her to her own bed. It's true that people's daily life, it's their real life. Often we say the small gestures of daily life that tell us how much they love each other. Cooking dinner. I mean, all of these people that I spoke to, there was a really sweet couple.
Et Paul, en fait, coupe les ongles des orteils.
Je ferai ça un autre jour.
It was about one of them cutting the other's toenails, and it was so sweet. Paul and Xavier, because he can no longer bend over sufficiently to cut his own toenails. So these little details are very touching. Frédéric, I was going to talk about destructive love, but because there were a lot of stories about that as well. But very often, I was thinking of Marie Devey that I met in Chamonix, and she said that as a child, she didn't like her body, and she had become very comfortable with her body and was able to walk around naked with the person she loved. She wasn't afraid to walk around the house in the nude, and for her, this was something that she had never experienced in her life, although she'd been with a man for 30 years. And this wasn't a passionate love affair that she was in. They met when they were hiking, and she just feels comfortable with him, comfortable with her body, and so I found it very touching.
Bon, mais l'amour, c'est aussi la rupture.
Well, love is about separation as well.
On va rentrer dans le
Let's get down to brass tacks now.
Aurélie Lacroix, c'est à vous que
Aurélie Lacroix, I think I need to ask you this question because it's the topic of your entire book. And you're going to read part of it for us.
L'autre s'en va et la vie devient différente. Chaque matin rappelle l'absence, chaque matin ravive son poids écrasant. À chaque réveil, ma première pensée lui était destinée. Est-elle toujours dans ma vie ? Non, elle n'était plus dans ma vie. Nous nous étions trop aimés, nous nous étions mal aimés. Pourtant, nous nous étions toujours attendus, incapables de nous oublier, même quand nous nous l'ordonnions, même quand l'autre était catégorique. Nous avions lutté en vain. Eux m'avaient souvent raconté ces nuits passées avec son portable dans la main, espérant qu'il sonnerait, priant pour que mon nom apparaisse sur l'écran. J'avais décrit les miennes, la torpeur dans laquelle me plongeaient les ruptures que je pensais toujours définitives, malgré les changements d'avis, malgré les réconciliations. Mais cette fois, c'était vraiment fini. Chaque matin de ce printemps de 2017, j'étais l'héroïne du roman épistolaire de AAX de John Berger. J'étais Aïda. Chaque nuit, je t'assemble à nouveau, un nom après l'autre, tous délicats, écrit-elle à son amoureux. C'est ce que je faisais tous les soirs pour m'aider à traverser la nuit. À mon réveil, eux étaient de nouveau assemblés. J'essayais de la garder entière le plus longtemps possible. Je savais que dès que je me mettrais en mouvement, dès que je poserais un pied par terre, la journée allait la disloquer à nouveau, jusqu'au soir où, avec application, je la remonterais de A à Z. Il m'a fallu du temps pour la retirer de la liste de mes amis Facebook. Je ne la gardais pas pour voir ce qu'elle postait. Elle ne postait rien. C'était pour la petite lumière verte. Cette lumière, en bas à droite de la photo de profil, qui s'allume lorsqu'on est connecté. La voir allumée la rendait à nouveau vivante. La voir allumée me reliait à elle, moi qui n'avais plus le droit de l'appeler, ni de la voir. Et quand c'était trop difficile, je me disais, je l'appellerai demain. Le lendemain, je me répétais la même chose, et ainsi de suite. Au bout de 2 ans, j'ai enfin éteint la lumière en la supprimant de mes contacts.
La petite lumière verte, évidemment, ça nous renvoie à
The little green light on Facebook. The little green light, that reminds us of a major novel about love, The Great Gatsby. Did the three of you have famous love stories in mind as you were writing your books that accompanied you? No, not at all.
Moi, j'en ai déjà parlé, en fait. C'est vrai qu'il y avait
I think I've already talked about this. Hervé Guibert, Crazy About Vincent.
Et donc, je l'ai lu au moment de l'écriture. Mais il y a un autre.
It was a book I read while I was writing mine. Another
qui, évidemment, d'une certaine manière, est aussi. Alors,
being that accompanied me. It's not really a love story, but it was Joan Didion's book that she wrote after her husband passed away. he died suddenly, and she's writing as catharsis and in deep sorrow. I never thought I would give this kind of reply to this question, but for me that was a love story. I don't think we all expect the same thing from love. We don't all romanticize it in the same way. Somebody said we would never fall in love if we hadn't read love stories. And I think depending on what you read, what you watch, I love stories in movies. It conditions your way of thinking about love and what you expect out of love.
C'est vrai que c'est un livre d'Aurélie qui donne envie.
Aurélie's book makes you want to read other books because you talk a lot about films and plays in your book.
Ça rappelle même des livres qu'on a lus et ça donne envie de les relire.
Sometimes it reminds us of books that we've read ourselves or would prompt us to read others' books. Passion Simple by Annie Ernaux. I've read it and I should read it again. I used to love Marguerite Duras. I still do, but I haven't read anything recently. And I think that those may have been my influences or those that accompany me. The Lover by Marguerite Duras might have been an influence. Pierric, when we read you, we think about Thoreau because your character is a mountain man. Thoreau was crazy about love as well. It might seem paradoxical, but you said it wasn't. He said, there's no remedy for love but to love more. Do you agree with that? Yes. I'm in love with all the people I met when writing my book. So, yes, you have to love. That's what keeps us going. That's what I call resistance. Always love others or another, whether it's your friends or nature or whatever, but living your life with love. That's what guides me day in and day out. Meeting people, sharing, living our lives so that we can share with others. And no matter what happens, pick yourself back up and keep hoping, not necessarily in romantic love, but in human beings. Yes. I think I agree, loving more. I think that's the key, learning that. But I also hope that all of those who have been hurt by love will not give up on love, because yes, love can hurt a great deal, but it can also make you extremely happy. It can change us. And life is fairly short, even though for some people it's long, but even when it's long, it's short, if you see what I mean. So perhaps nobody's going to ask us a question when we die, but if they did, I would like it to be, did you love and were you loved? At the end of my life, I would like to be able to say that I loved and had been loved. That's not, my life isn't just that. It can also be loving to do something, loving a work of art, anything that gives you strong emotions. Yes. No remedy for love but to love more. I think that's what drives the narrator of my book. He has a love story ongoing, and then this other person emerges and he decides to give in to passion, maybe partly because it might help him to love more, but it doesn't end well for him, so the idea of loving more may be a bit dangerous. You might get hurt in the process. So it's a good idea, but one that you should use cautiously. This is not really an answer to your questions, but in the books,
dans le cas de cette histoire-là,
in my book especially,
voulu essayer d'aimer davantage, il va finir
by trying to love more, he's going to lose a lot.
Lui, au milieu du livre, il dirait oui, un grand oui.
In the middle of the book, he would say, yes, yes, of course, loving more. That's the ticket. He would shout it from the rooftops, and at the end, he might say it wasn't worth it in the end. And it might have been smarter to stay with his partner in that comfortable relationship that was like an old slipper. Maybe he wouldn't be so down at the end. But on the other hand, maybe it's better to live intensely and live things to their fullest. Yes, because the separation scene, when, I don't know if I should tell this, it's a spoiler. There's a breakup scene and you draw it out, and I think that was because you wanted to show that how much this man is losing. He's losing a part of himself. Yes, but it's also his personality that comes out at that point. It's difficult, very difficult for him to accept that this woman who he loves and respects, that their relationship has to end because he's met someone else. They're not breaking up because they don't get on. It's just because there's someone else who he's attracted to. So it's a form of respect for this character, Eloise. The narrator doesn't want to. He says as much. He says he doesn't want to send her or break up with her by SMS. He understands that he's going to make her suffer, and in fact, he's already suffering as he's thinking about leaving her. He wishes he didn't have to do this. He wishes he didn't have to put her through it. But he's thinking about her, and that's why he takes so much time to tell her that he wants to be available if she wants to talk. And in fact, in their relationship, he's tried to be intelligent and it might seem exaggerated or a luxury, but it's not. It's another fundamental issue in life, the issue of time, how we spend our time and what we devote it to. So yes, it is a long scene because he wants to take his time.
Est-ce que vous avez des questions pour l'un de nos trois écrivains?
Are there any questions in the audience for our three authors?
Sur l'amour, hein, vous avez compris.
Questions about love. But I think you got that by now.
Oui.
Yes? Please wait for the microphone. Please wait for the microphone.
Est-ce qu'il y a différentes sortes de temps?
Are there different kinds of time
dans l'amour?
In love?
Des temps compressés, des temps
compressed time, long time, lengthy time.
C'est quelque chose d'essentiel dans l'amour.
Is this essential in love?
Oui, je crois que vous avez raison.
Yes, I think you're right.
Il me semble, je ne sais pas ce que vous en pensez, vous, mais
it seems to me that that's the case. I don't know what you think, but there are different phases.
Cette idée qu'à certains moments, on a
And
l'impression que
there's
ça va
this
très vite,
idea
puis
that at the beginning you want things to go fast, and then maybe following that there's a phase which is longer and where things seem to be more drawn out, getting to know each other, coming to terms with certain things, and that's very different. I don't know if there's necessarily passion and then you go straight to the daily life phase.
En fait, on peut moduler
These periods can be mixed. I think every love story is different. And we see this in the three books we're talking about here. I think it's even possible to fall in love after you've been with someone for 10 years. Discover the strength of your feelings for someone after living with them for a long time, realizing that in the end you live with somebody who you feel more passionate about than you ever knew. Maybe this is just me, but I get the impression that it's not always the first months that are the honeymoon phase, and then as soon as you get down to daily life, things start to go downhill. I think that's a bit simplistic. There are so many things to experience in a long relationship. What happens after the first year, the first 10 years, who can tell? I'm always touched, I think we probably all are, by stories, love stories that last, and accounts of love stories that last. That's why I really liked your book, and especially the interviews with people who've spent 30 or 40 years together. Didn't love all of that time together, but loved certain parts of it, and who have become one in a way, who've created or have created a third being, which is the mixture of the two of them, which is absolutely unique. And you can tell that there's a great deal of intimacy, but that's very different from one relationship to another. Sometimes you can feel or see things in couples that have been together for a long time that makes you a bit envious. They have such closeness. It's almost like a little painting that's floating above their head, something abstract, a creation that both of them have contributed to, and that touches me. Another question, perhaps? Interpreters are waiting for the microphone. We can't hear the question, unfortunately. Could we please have a microphone for the speaker?
Alors autant sur le temps, je savais éventuellement quoi dire.
I think I could have answered the question about time, but luck?
Alors je sais pas si une histoire de chance. Moi, je vais
I don't know
d'une histoire
if you can talk about luck, but
je pense qu'il n'y a pas de hasard.
I don't think that we can talk about chance. So what's the association of luck and chance? But with respect to temporality, I think all of us have been constructed or forged with the idea, even as children, that when you fall in love with someone, it should last. And at the same time, we know that it can end. So there's always this dichotomy. It's like a balancing act. And of course, it's hard work. You can't take in a relationship for granted. Why is it hard work? Because there are two people involved, and they're both developing and changing. Why is there such movement, you said? Because two people are growing up, changing, but they're still connected by their love. So if you don't continue to maintain it, even if there's a lot of intimacy and closeness, I think there's some sort of effort needed. Most of the people I talked to were like teams. It was as if they had their best friend sitting next to them. It didn't seem like work. They discovered the person little by little, and as they did, they fell more and more in love with them. Nora said, it wasn't the beginning of our love story that I loved the most. It was as I started to discover how extraordinary this person was. People didn't seem to think it was hard work. It was very natural to make plans together. Planning holidays. It's the same as two friends who like the same things, reading, opera. I didn't get the feeling that there was it was a big effort for people in these long-term relationships. If there's hard work involved, we talked about fading away. If that happens and people feel alone, it has to do with work, but if people are not close anymore, they throw themselves into their work and then they end up alone. There were a lot of unhappy stories that I heard because of things like this. Well, that's not a very positive note to end on. Well, it wasn't a big effort to listen to you talk about love. Thank you very much. I suppose you're going to be signing your books upstairs. Thank you.